A shocking scene today on Capitol Hill, one that some Democrats say resembled a mob and the closest thing to, quote, civil unrest that they have ever seen since joining Congress. Congressional Republicans outraged is what they say is a sham impeachment inquiry launched by their colleagues across the aisle, stormed this closed-door deposition in a secure room and disrupted the testimony of the Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary. They claimed that the process and not the actual testimony regarding President Trump and his behavior on Ukraine is the issue.
It should be the people of this country who decide who's going to be the president, not Nancy Pelosi and not Adam Schiff in secret behind closed doors.
The millions of Americans that we represent that want to see this Congress working for them and not obsessed with attacking a president who we believe has not done anything to deserve impeachment.
It is a sham, and it's time for it to end.
What is happening here is not fair.
And it's a total political hit job on the President of the United States.
And folks, it isn't over yet. Those Republicans are still in that secure room, refusing to leave. One Democratic congressman tells CNN that snacks were brought in and they are now eating pizza. So let's go straight to our senior congressional correspondent, Manu Raju. You have been watching all of this unfold. It appears to just be a total political stunt. How are you assessing it?
Yeah, it is completely stalled, the impeachment proceedings that are happening right now. This was supposed to be today where Laura Cooper, the top defense official, was testifying about questions about why that military aid had been withheld. And of course, it's come in the aftermath of that explosive testimony yesterday from the president's top diplomat in Ukraine, who said that the reason why that this was held up, that he was told it was that the president wanted public declaration of investigations into matters that could help his political campaign. That's why that vital national security aid had been held up. Now, earlier this morning, roughly 24 members stormed this committee room, demanded to take part in the process. I'm told a Republican from Alabama, Bradley Byrne, got in the face of Adam Schiff. I'm told also that Louis Gohmert, another Republican, was screaming in the hearing room. One Democrat yelled back, Val Demings of Florida, criticizing them, saying, are you telling your children that it's okay to lie, steal, and cheat so long as you don't get caught? Now, this is still ongoing, and one Republican member who did leave, Mo Brooks, I had a chance to ask him about the substance that was raised yesterday, but he wanted to rail on the process.
Good outcome.
You're okay with withholding military aid for that?
I don't know that was the case. I think
that's what Mr. Taylor testified to yesterday under sworn testimony.
And there are people who testified to the exact opposite, who have publicly stated to the exact opposite,
who has said that
including the president of Ukraine. Y'all have a good day.
Y'all have a good day.
Yeah, so he didn't clarify exactly who. He didn't exactly clarify who he was referring to that testified to the opposite, because more witnesses who have come forward have corroborated some key elements of that whistleblower complaint. But one other thing, Brooke, some of these members came in carrying electronic devices, which is not allowed in the secure hearing room. I'm told that they were eventually confiscated and given back. This protest is still ongoing, an effort to disrupt these impeachment proceedings. So it's a question about whether or not this hearing will take place with this witness, or whether they'll continue to do this with several other witnesses who are scheduled to come forward. Brooke.
Manu, keep an eye on it. We'll talk about all of this in just a second, but let me also get to this today. The president, who campaigned on draining the swamp, is now being accused of extending it way beyond U.S. borders. The most damning testimony yet in the impeachment inquiry undercuts the defense on the whole point of quid pro quo with Ukraine. This comes from his own top diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor. Taylor just testified that Trump pushed Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and his son in exchange for military aid to be released. And now the White House is going after the messenger. The press secretary calls this, quote, a coordinated smear campaign from far left lawmakers and radical unelected bureaucrats, end quote. But Taylor was sought out by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo himself in June of this year, and Taylor even writes in his testimony how he consulted with a Republican mentor before even taking the job in Ukraine. And then once he did, Taylor said that he found a U.S. foreign policy divided in two, a regular way of doing things and another, quote, highly irregular channel that involved Rudy Giuliani. CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider breaks down Taylor's 15-page opening statement. Jessica, what did he say?
Well, Brooke, 15 pages of opening testimony, and Bill Taylor spent nearly 10 hours behind closed doors on Capitol Hill. And one Democrat who emerged called it his most disturbing day in Congress so far. And that's really because of the impassioned detail that Taylor laid out in part in these 15 pages of his opening statement. Taylor says how he learned and how officials told him that President Trump held up that military aid to Ukraine and refused that meeting with Ukraine's new President Zelensky until Zelensky agreed to publicly pledge to investigate the president's political rivals. Now, Taylor in particular recalled a conversation with EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, who we remember testified last week. In that conversation, Taylor says Ambassador Sondland said everything was dependent on such an announcement, including security assistance. He said that President Trump wanted President Zelensky in a public box by making a public statement about ordering such investigations. Those investigations President Trump wanted included Burisma, that's the Ukrainian company that hired Joe Biden's son Hunter, as well as investigations into Ukraine's alleged involvement in the 2016 election, which the president has been pushing really as an alternate explanation to the Russian interference. Now, Taylor also testified that both Sondland and Special Envoy to Ukraine Kurt Volker described the president's position in all of this as normal because of his business background, saying this in testimony. On September 8th, Ambassador Sondland tried to explain to me that President Trump is a businessman. When a businessman is about to sign a check to someone who owes him something, he said, the businessman asks that person to pay up before signing the check. Now, Taylor testified that that rationale really made no sense to him. And of course, we saw that text from Taylor calling it, quote, crazy to hold up aid and assistance to Ukraine for political gain. Of course, Democrats are pouncing on this and pointing to Taylor's testimony as the smoking gun here, saying that he really confirmed Ukraine's pledge to investigate was required for that White House meeting with the president and military aid. And that Taylor also pinned Sondland as knowing all this. Although we've talked to a source familiar with Sondland's testimony, they've told us that Sondland really gave multiple reasons that the security aid was frozen and was really only speculating when he referenced those political investigations. But of course, Taylor in his testimony also talked about his conversations with Ukrainian officials, including one who relayed that President Zelensky at one point did not want to be used as a pawn in the U.S. re-election campaign. But Brooke, here, a lot of detail revealed by Taylor in these 15 pages of opening testimony. And now because of that, Brooke, some lawmakers are saying that they want Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the EU, possibly to be called back to testify to explain some of these discrepancies.